Hi, welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Lilly Neuman, the host. Viewpoint's mission is to bring you information on issues that are concerning us as families in our community. We do it by bringing you our guests that are on the front lines dealing with these issues. We do it so that you have resources and you know what's in your community. And we also, our mission is to help those that are struggling with these issues and help to prevent people from getting involved and know where to go. And my co-host is Susan Salomone, the Executive Director of Drug Crisis in Our Backyard.
Hey, Lily, how you doing today?
Hi, Susan.
Good, so nice to see you.
You too. And our guest today is Kevin Byrne, candidate for State Assembly for the 94th District. Welcome.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank
you, Susan.
Thank you for being here.
I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you for everything you do.
So tell us, what are your district, and what is your platform?
Sure. So my name's Kevin Byrne. I'm born and raised in this district. The district encompasses 4 towns in Putnam, as well as 2 in Westchester. It's Putnam Valley, Carmel, Patterson Southeast, and Yorktown and Somers in Westchester County. I'm running for state assembly because, having grown up in this district, having made friends and connections and been invested in this community, I've seen some things that I'm not particularly proud of where New York has been going. Mm-hmm. A lot of my classmates that I grew up with, I went to Carmel High School. Mm-hmm. A lot of my classmates don't live here in New York State anymore because it's far too expensive. I believe that we're losing a generation of New Yorkers. Our young people, also our seniors, mm-hmm. once they reach retirement age, right. They're being forced to leave. They're going to states like the Carolinas, mm-hmm. Florida, even New Jersey. Corporate headquarters are going to places like even Massachusetts. GE was in Stamford, Connecticut. They went to Boston. Mm-hmm. So that's my driving motivation. I think everyone should have a reason. I firmly believe in public service. I've volunteered in the fire department as an EMT, firefighter, active with the Boy Scouts. But for me, running for state assembly, it's about public service and trying to make sure that future generations mm-hmm. have an opportunity to stay in New York.
So why do you think that these companies are leaving New York State? Why are they going to other states like Massachusetts? Massachusetts is fairly expensive as well.
That's very true. I usually bring up that example as like a wow, mm-hmm. factor, because having them go to the Carolinas is not a big surprise. We're almost getting used to it, unfortunately. Yeah. But losing to Massachusetts should be a wake-up
right.
call,
right?
Like a real wow. New York State has been on the headlines for some things that a lot of us are not very happy about, and one of them is we're ranked last repeatedly, 49th or 50th for business. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks who want to get a job, if you're a recent college graduate mm-hmm. and you're in New York State, there is some opportunities in Manhattan, right? You mm-hmm. can get a job here, right. but it's increasingly difficult. Right. It's easier to get a job in a place like the Carolinas, mm-hmm. and folks go there. They have a more friendly environment where the taxes are less, and it's just more welcoming. And I think that's part of the reason. And the one example I was bringing up is GE. I know in Westchester County, mm-hmm. The county executive down there, Rob Astorino, mm-hmm. I think was really lobbying hard to get GE to come into Westchester. And I do not fault him. I think he tried very hard. I mm-hmm. think New York State's platform is not business friendly.
Got it. So they're not giving taxes, they're not giving them tax breaks to come in. That would be the major reason why a company like GE would leave Connecticut to go to Massachusetts, where your labor market is going to be about the same. You're not going to pay less for right. people. I mean, a lot of people in Massachusetts are out of those colleges, mm-hmm. the college towns. So you're not going to pay less for the labor market. But the state itself might be giving incentives to companies that move in. I'm sure that happened in the South.
That too,
that
yeah.
definitely happened in the South. It would be interesting to investigate that. Do you know why they went to Massachusetts, or if there was incentives given by the state to entice them to come, like tax incentives? It's always about the tax
mm-hmm.
incentives.
I know the governor in Connecticut, I think his name is it Malloy, or I think it's Governor Malloy is the one in Connecticut. And then there's in Massachusetts, I'm not sure what their incentive is. I've heard things like, oh, it's just because that's where the CEO wanted to go. I don't tend to believe that. Mm-hmm. I think it's because of tax structure.
Yeah.
And I believe that they didn't go to Westchester County or New York State because we're just not friendly enough.
Right.
It includes, tax incentives is definitely part of it. It's also mandates. You hear all about these unfunded mandates on county governments,
could you
but it's
stop
also
there a minute
business.
for the mandates? Because mandates are kind of confusing. What does the word even mean? What are mandates?
Sure. So for the way I interpret the word mandate, it's a rule or a regulation on a local government, a local business. It can even be a nonprofit, and it's costing them money. So when the New York State makes a mandate on, say, Putnam County, you have to do X, Y, Z, but you have to pay for it. So a lot of times, New York State is shifting the burden and the responsibility on local governments, local businesses, but they are not providing funding for it. That's not right. If you believe in home rule as I do, you're going to say, okay, Putnam County, okay, local business, let's come together. Let's let's do what's right. You can make your decisions, and you can pay for it. But if we're going to force it on you, then if New York State's going to force things on you, then New York State should provide some funding. That's a big problem with our schools too. Not to get off topic, but a lot of our schools have a lot of unfunded mandates that they have to deal with, which is another big reason why we're pushing people out of New York State. We're losing a generation because property taxes in New York State are very, very difficult, especially if you're a recent graduate. So there was a recent There's a recent study I read. It's a nonprofit called Reclaim New York, nonpartisan. They did a study that showed, young couple, recent graduates, how old is the average age for you to be able to afford a down payment on a home in New York State? And the answer was 39. So you're nearly 40 years old. You're almost halfway through your working career. Hopefully you can work longer than that. I don't know. But you're almost halfway through your working career when you can just move somewhere else.
Right.
And buy a home in the Carolinas at 21. Maybe you make a little bit less, but
you don't have to wait so many years.
you can do that. So it's very, very difficult. And the mandates on businesses, the mandates on our local towns and governments and schools, that's a big problem.
And so that's why the taxes, you think, are so high that people can't afford to live here.
That's part of the reason, That's definitely part of the reason is mandates on our local schools.
So what about the non-funded mandates? Non-funded mandates, non-funded mandates are not being paid back. So the school has to put something in place, or the government the county has to put something in place, and they're not getting reimbursed by New York State. Is that correct?
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
They're not being reimbursed for putting that service in.
Which they're mandating that we pay for.
Yeah. So another example, not to get off topic, but another example is on my website when we talk about mandate relief. I use an example on Medicaid. Now I think it's important to kind of understand the distinctions because there's a lot of confusion in the population. Medicare is the federal government. It's for mainly our seniors, and Medicaid is for folks who are below the threshold on income, right? So we're helping those who are in more need.
Right.
Medicaid is run through New York State, but they grant it to the county governments. The state government pays a share of that, and the county government pays a share of that. But there are mandated services from New York State. Every state provides some sort of Medicaid, but in New York, we mandate far more than other states do around the country.
And that's coming from where?
That's coming from Albany. They are mandating more services. The federal government has said, okay, here's the services you need to provide. Here's the federally mandated services. And here are other services you can provide.
If you want.
New York mandates almost all of them. So we have like this Cadillac plan that costs a lot more money in New York State. I support...
Than other states,
other states, correct.
So that would be a big reason why on tax. That's a really
big reason. Yeah, very big reason. I support a model that, again, home rule. If Westchester County wants to have all these more mandated services, let them. But allow them to opt out of those non-federally mandated services. If they want to. If they want to. And then they can help them reduce their taxes. But for us to be forcing this on all these governments, all these county governments, it's very costly.
I wish we'd know how much. Does anyone have a number?
The total budget line for Medicaid? I don't have that offhand.
I mean, just in general, just how much are we spending?
A lot.
Yeah, I could tell you, by contrast, Florida is comparable in population to New York State. They've increased population while we've decreased population. They're leading in business, competing with Texas. Well, we're trying to get out of last place. And Florida's budget is about $75 billion, right? Sounds like a lot. New York State is nearly $155 billion. So they're almost half of where we are.
Right.
Right? But so that's because other states don't do things the same way. And I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We need to look at what is working in other states.
And then use that as a model for us.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good place to start.
So are you looking towards other states for some of your mission? Like how are they doing certain things?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I just learned in life, you know, whether it's in the fire department or what have you, learn from other people is smart. I believe in active learning. You see any politician who thinks they know it all, you know, I think that's a bad start. They're full of it. You got to go in there knowing that you've worked hard, but you're willing to learn more. You always have to be willing to learn. And if you're in state government, you should be able to look at what's working in other states.
Right. I
mean, the governor in Florida is, if you go to his website, I think it's still there, it's got this slogan on top. It's Florida first. I think that's kind of inspiring. Florida first.
Right.
They want to compete with Texas. They want to be leading the country. And we're just trying to get out of last place. I mean,
why Texas? Why are they competing with Texas?
Well, I mean, they're for business climate. If you look at Texas, you look at Florida, they've all increased representation in the federal government.
Okay.
More congressional districts.
Yeah, how in what, the last
In the
period?
last 10 years, just the
Okay,
last
10
census is what I would look
All
at.
right, okay.
So, you know, they do the census every 10 years.
Yeah.
They've increased congressional representation because they have more population than us.
Got it.
We've lost congressional representation.
Okay.
So I actually worked in Congress for a little bit. I've never run for office. This is the first time. But I worked in for a former congresswoman who represented what was at the time the 19th congressional district. All these districts changed, and New York lost 2 congressional seats after the census.
Okay.
Wow.
So look at the states that are growing.
Got it.
And move there.
And
Yeah, well, I want people to have the opportunity to
stay here
yes.
and to afford to live here.
But plenty of people have moved, and I don't
That's
judge
right.
them for it. I hope that they can come back.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, Kevin, there's no place like New York.
No,
I
there isn't.
love New York. You go into New York City and the energy there is above and beyond. And I have a home in Florida as well. I have a condo in Florida and I have a home in New York. And so I visit Florida regularly. And you know what? You can't compare. You can't compare the two. You can't compare the energy in those two states. And so, you know, I'm a very strong proponent of people staying in New York. I think New York has excellent schools, really the top schools in the nation. They really do. I worked in New York City. I worked for the Board of Ed for a while. I was a teacher for 10 years. And we just have the best schools. And even though we know that the city schools, they really have a lot of issues, I will tell you that the resources I had in those schools were over the top, really over the top. Libraries for those kids like you wouldn't believe. I worked in the Bronx. And so I am a strong proponent of people staying right here in New York. So what else do you suggest to help keep people here? What are some of the other things in your mission if you were to be elected to the Assembly? What are some of the other things you would bring forward?
Sure. I think the number one thing for me, what we kind of spoke about, is affordability. So people have that opportunity to stay here. And I am so glad that you love New York. I love New York too. I've lived here my whole life, and my wife and I, she's a physician's assistant in the Bronx at Montefiore Hospital or Einstein Hospital. And you know, we could have probably moved anywhere and got a job, but we stayed here because we want to, not because it made economic sense to. We would be well off better if we moved somewhere. But we want to be here too, so I get that. I think there's a lot of issues that are important to folks. Some of the ones that I lay out on my website that anyone can look at, it's burnforny.com. I talk about protecting all of our constitutional freedoms. I think a lot of folks in New York like to know that they can bear arms. Yeah, they have the right to bear arms. And I think New York State, in the past several years, they've seen tragedy. That have rocked this world and has bothered all of us, and they're awful. But unfortunately, they've taken this knee-jerk reaction to try to just legislate a problem away, and they inadvertently created this thing called the New York SAFE Act.
Right.
And,
what's that?
Yeah.
Explain
Well, that in my mind, I'm against it. I support full repeal of it because it targets law-abiding gun owners. It doesn't do what, it wouldn't have prevented anything from when we talk about the Sandy Hook tragedies or these other tragedies. When you're going at, when you pass these laws that are targeting law-abiding gun owners, that's not going after the criminals.
But the only thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, he legally had those guns, the Sandy Hook guy.
Yeah, through his mother. Through his mother.
Okay.
That's,
So someone legally had them, and I don't know the safe act, so I'm not going to pretend that I do.
Can you tell us what the safe act is?
Sure. Well, I'll talk about for that example just really quick. I would say that her son didn't get them, that they're not his firearms, but he shouldn't have had access to them.
Right.
Okay.
They're not his
Got it.
firearms.
Okay.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
not right.
Okay.
But there was a lot of other things that they did with the New York Safe Act. They one of them that I find was really bad is that no one had any public input at all. It was passed in the dead of night, any piece of legislation, regardless if you're a law-abiding gun or if you believe in the Second Amendment, as I do, or if you disagree with me on this issue, that's fine. No legislation should be passed at 1 a.m. without anyone having the opportunity to review it. One big problem with that piece of legislation that it did was it actually, because of limits in the firearms that they had, it made law enforcement criminals overnight because firearms that they were carrying were made illegal. Now, those things were made, there's been amendments to adjust that, but the reality is there's a lot of folks out there that believe, as I do, if you're going to possess a firearm and you're obeying the laws, that you shouldn't be punished for the actions of somebody else. You know, you shouldn't be suffering consequences for someone that was breaking our rules.
But then how do we protect our citizens? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be allowed to bear arms. It's in the Constitution. But then how do we set up these safeguards so that they don't get into the wrong hands?
Yeah. I honestly, I think that having good, civic-minded, law-abiding gun owners is a good thing. I think that helps them make our community safer.
Okay.
I
think
agree.
I think it makes us safer. I don't think it's bad.
Don't.
Yeah, and I think supporting our law enforcement is a great thing too.
Absolutely.
Across this country, there's
trouble.
a lot of strife. I guess would be the word I'm looking for with law enforcement, and I think we really, as a community, need to come behind law enforcement. Susan, you're from Mayapack now,
Yep.
right? So I remember Easter weekend. Do you remember there was graffiti? I'm not sure if they actually ever caught them.
I don't either.
Yeah, but they graffitied all over Mayapack.
Yeah.
And they wrote derogatory comments about law enforcement. And I think part of that is this national discussion. We got to be able to support our first responders and our members of law enforcement.
I think that, just to weigh in on this topic, I think that people that want to get guns for criminal use will get guns.
Right.
It's, like, even no matter what you do, you can't legislate everything. I believe in small government. I believe that this should be run by the people, not by the government. It's too expensive to run anything with a top-heavy organization. And so when you say, how do we protect the citizens? People that have guns need to be educated, just like we talk about the drugs, that needs to be education. And I don't know if there is education around when somebody buys a gun, if they should then go into a training class of some sort where everything has to be locked up so that someone like that boy who was mentally ill got his mother's guns and shot people. The reality of it is we can't protect everybody. Whether we lock up the guns, whether we don't allow guns, we can't protect everyone. And it isn't the responsibility of any government to protect all its citizens. It's not going to happen. We have to do that on a very local level. Try to protect the citizens. Like it takes a village.
Right.
To repeat Hillary Clinton.
Right.
It takes a village to protect itself,
And I think people have to be aware that if you have someone in your home that has mental illness, you don't give them guns.
Yeah, well, it's also, I like one of the things you said, Susan, I like a lot, training.
Yeah.
So I know
have training?
Nationally, there's a lot of folks that give the NRA a bad rap. I'm a member of the National Rifle Association. I can tell you, I got involved. I don't shoot every weekend. I'm not some big gun-toting conservative. I just happen to believe that it's a constitutional right and that we should all be protected by it. That's the foundation
Okay.
for my belief there. But I did learn how to shoot at
Right.
an early age with the Boy Scouts. I
Okay.
was, I'm an Eagle Scout. I
Right.
was an assistant scout master for years. But I learned to shoot at 11 years old.
Right.
Shooting a rifle. And then in college, I was in the Army ROTC program. I wasn't able to get a commission because I had back surgery, so I couldn't get through the medical. But I shot an M16.
Right.
And now I have friends that on occasion, I'll go trap shooting with. And it's fun, it's recreational, and I have a firearm in my home to protect my family and
But
my
you're
property.
trained.
Yeah, but most folks that are law-abiding gun owners, they like training.
Right.
It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
I don't know anyone that's against training. So I think that's a good thing. Training is good.
Do you know if it's mandatory when you buy a weapon to be trained on the safety of it?
I can tell you my experience, I was trained. As far as, I know there's some discussion around pistol permits that they would like more training.
Yeah.
I actually don't disagree with that. I think right now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when you apply for a pistol permit, you do have to go through training eventually. But say you say, I'm thinking of applying for a pistol permit. So I want to try a pistol in a gun range with an instructor and check it out. You're not allowed to. Because you have to go through that process first.
You have to
So
get
if
the
you want
training
to,
first.
you have to apply and then go through training. But what if you wanted to go through training to see if this is something you're interested in?
Right.
You can't.
That's not allowed. I actually think that's a good thing, and I think that's something that, I'm a Republican, but I think that's something that Democrats and Republicans could hopefully work together on. That's more training.
Right.
It would also get more people involved in learning how to use a firearm responsibly.
Right.
And then they can make the decision on their own if they want to do it. I'd rather do that than have them apply without really knowing for sure.
We know there's an organization down in Yonkers called SNUG, which is about safe guns, and what they're doing is getting parents to ask other parents when their kids are going over to their homes to say, do you have a firearm and is it locked up? So just as we used to say, is there a parent home when you have your friends sleep over or your kids go to someone else's home? Is there going to be a parent home? They're getting the conversation, I guess, to talk about safety and to make sure that these guns are in a safe place.
Right.
And they give out the locks and the boxes and the whole bit.
Oh, that's good.
Just to
That's
make
great.
sure that people who have firearms, they're safe, in a safe place. So maybe more of that education.
So that's another area of that you'll be moving forward if you get elected.
Is protecting our Second Amendment? Absolutely.
Yeah, trying to repeal the SAFE Act.
Absolutely.
So what's another thing? What is
great.
something else we can?
Certainly. I think number one thing is taxes, affordability. I also happen to believe in supporting our first responders. There's a lot of folks out there, and this might just sound like warm apple pie, right? Who doesn't support our first responders? But a lot of folks, especially recently in Putnam County, I've heard them talking about, we should go to paid fire service. Do you have any idea how much our volunteer firefighters and their departments save on our tax dollars?
A lot.
So I'm a member of the Firemen's Association for the state of New York. Also, nonprofit, nonpartisan.
Right.
They did a study throughout the state of New York, and if they were going to make your fire departments go all career, right? This is not even ambulances, my understanding, just fire departments. It would go. Everyone's property taxes would go up 26%. Wow. And Putnam County, they drilled it down by county.
Okay.
Putnam County would go up 56%.
Wow.
Now, and again, we in Putnam County, we do have paid paramedic services. There's some sprinklings of paid EMTs with basic life support services.
Okay.
But that would go up a lot. I'm also, some other issues that I'm very passionate about is I'm proud pro-life. I have been. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, my including close members of my family. And I can tell you, I love them and they love me.
Right.
We got to, as a country, you got to be able to be who you are. And don't be afraid of it. I'm pro-life, and I don't believe that New York State should be using any of its tax dollars to pay for any agency or organization that provides abortions. That's my personal opinion that I would take up to Albany.
Okay.
And I will tell you, as pro-life, I think Chris Christie talked about this at one point. I loved it. If you consider yourself, quote-unquote, pro-life, it's not just about in the womb.
Right.
It's well beyond
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Okay.
As a first responder, as an EMT, I've taken patients to hospice care. I've taken patients to different rehab facilities. Those folks need to be taken care of too.
They
So
absolutely
I think
do.
that's
Absolutely
very,
do.
very important.
And you're
It's
right,
not
that was-
just about the
He
the
did,
work.
because I saw that speech. And I
Yeah.
have to say, I almost
Yeah.
wrote to him and said, this is the first time I actually liked what you have to say. Because that was, and he said it continues, and he talks about all of our young adults who are dying of the heroin epidemic.
Right, exactly.
And that you have to protect them, and we have to have insurance, and they need treatment now.
Right.
Not in 2-3 weeks.
Right.
You know,
Right.
So that was his speech. I actually watched it.
It was-
and
it was moving.
It was very moving, I have to say. It was very, very moving.
I missed that one.
And he
Yeah.
shared about a friend that he lost.
He did, as a law student that he went to
That's right.
school
He
with.
went to school
It's
with,
funny.
had everything.
When I watched that, the first minute, I'm like, where's he going with this? And then he went through this long story, and really, he just said, we look at someone who, I think he talked about his grandmother. You see someone who smoked tobacco.
right.
And I used to work for the American Heart Association.
Right.
Okay, I know tobacco's bad for you. All right, but they smoked. They got cancer, went through chemotherapy, and everyone's like, okay, we're going to help. They knew smoking was
Yeah,
bad.
right.
They
That's
knew you're
right.
not supposed to do
Right.
it, but
No
they
stigma.
everyone wanted to help.
That's right.
But when you're suffering from alcohol addiction or drug addiction, it has not been treated the same way.
That's right, it has
You,
not.
there's this
It's
stigma
stigma,
attached to
that's
it.
right.
Where, and you know what? We all learn. 20 years ago, it's not today.
Right.
So we all need to come together as a community. I don't think that costs any tax dollars.
No,
by the
it
way,
doesn't.
all you need to do is you don't need to be a politician.
Right.
You just got to be able to speak publicly about it.
Right. Just
that-
talk about it.
That's right.
That does a lot.
That's it.
Just
talk
yesterday, I
about it.
happened to be in a furniture store. This is an interesting story because there's such stigma associated with it. And we were buying furniture in a store up in Danbury, and the guy asked me about my nonprofit because Steve said I was retired, but I was running a nonprofit. And I said, it's drug crisis in our backyard. I work every day doing this. So he said, oh, my son is in jail right now. He was arrested for drugs. He was doing Oxycontin. And he was talking in a regular voice.
That's
he was
right.
not whispering.
Right.
So we
That's
went
right.
from the register. We had to
That's
go
right.
down to another register. And there was a gentleman at that register. And he was just telling the story to us in his regular voice
That's right.
without
No shame.
whispering.
That's right.
I was so impressed
Right.
because most people, when they start talking about it, they start whispering.
That's right, because there's shame.
And I was very impressed with this man because he was right out there. He was like, I don't know what's going to happen when he comes home, but,
That's right.
he wasn't saying, they've got a lot of work to do, but he was not embarrassed
Right.
about it.
And that's what we need.
That's what we need.
right.
We need to talk about this
Right.
as if we talk about any
everything
other
else.
disease.
Yep.
Like talk about cancer.
Talk about
That's right.
cancer.
I
That's right.
agree. I agree. And I think it's a credit to the work that you do, Susan, and the folks in Yorktown, the task force they have down there. I think they
And
all
ASK.
do great work. Ask, that's
Ask
right.
has
right.
been doing it for 10 years now, really working, beating the drum about it. And it's going to take a long time.
It is.
So I have one more question.
Go on, you have
How
2
old are you?
seconds.
Oh, that's right.
We have 2
I'm so
seconds.
glad
How
you
old
asked.
are you?
So yeah, I got a haircut today. So I had this.
the first
I had,
thing came in.
I had this baby face. I'm 31.
Oh,
so
right. Good
I'm,
for
I'm
you.
happily married.
Kids?
We live in Mayapack. No kids yet,
Okay.
but I talk about this very passionately. Someone asked me, you running, saying you're losing a generation of New Yorkers and being a millennial, does that give you an advantage? I said, no, because they don't vote. Millennials, young people, they don't vote. But it affects every family because you got grandchildren that are
right.
leaving,
Yeah, right,
young
right.
people, and God willing, I'm able to have children. I want them to have the opportunity to stay
right.
in New York State.
That's right. And to be able to live.
Right.
And you know what? That's the end of our show. Thank you very much. And please join us again. And thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you.